Hey everyone, welcome into another Valorant guide with your boy Soy. This week we're going to be talking about mouse sensitivity, which is a hugely debated topic from pros all the way through to me. So with absolutely no time to waste, let's get into it. Now, mouse sensitivity is one of those hugely subjective things where you can be really low sensitivity, basically insensitive, like you're Jordan Peterson or someone.
Not advisable.
Or you can play highly sensitive, like Andrew Tate. And I'm going to be honest, and I'll tell you why. One size does not fit all. For every ultra sensitive, not on Adderall prod type gamer that plays at 2-3 sensitivity in game, there are 1,000 low sensitivity players who basically need an entirely different desk in order to hit flick shots where they end up throwing their mouse across the room. But that doesn't mean that there aren't ways that you can find the perfect sensitivity for you. So let's go through a few tips and find out what they are. Number one, don't copy pros. I pretty much just went through this, but yeah, don't. For almost everything else, you probably do want to copy the pros. I mean, they're professional for a reason. But when it comes to mouse sensitivity, don't. Basically, every single pro uses the sensitivity that they use because they've been using it either for a long time or it's taken them a long time to actually figure out the exact right sensitivity for them. There are a million variables to sensitivity. There is hand-eye coordination, the mouse you're using, the mouse pad you're using, reaction speeds, everything. Everything like that is a different variable for a different person. So you literally cannot copy a pro. So yeah, this is a pretty simple tip. Don't copy pros. You're not magically going to become 10s because you're using his mouse sensitivity, or even his mouse, or even his username. You're not going to become 10s like that. So if you're not 10s, what kind of player are you? Well, that's the next question. Number two, are you a flicker or a sitter? If you're a frenetic high-speed player, then you're probably checking 5 or 10 different angles all at once, and that's great. Until 5 or 10 years later when you start to have aneurysms and heart attacks because playing at that speed is really difficult to maintain. I like to call that kind of play style being a flicker. Basically somebody that plays at a higher sensitivity and is able to flick shots and even flick 180s completely with their movement. It's amazing, but it's really niche, and it's not something that I would recommend everybody to try, let alone to stick to. Unless you instinctively play like that, that is, then definitely work on it. But otherwise, don't try and pick it up just because you've seen someone like Prod playing like that. The next playstyle I like to call a sitter. Somebody who sits there, bides their time, plays angles, uses their brain, and generally plays in a way that you can actually increase your knowledge and your skill over time by playing this way. This is a much more slower and I guess a little bit more boring playstyle, but it's definitely a playstyle where you will find that you're gradually improving at a faster rate than if you're playing like a flicker who is just all over the place. Generally, most people are gonna fit in between flicker and sitter, somewhere in the middle, maybe leaning further one way or the other. So generally, depending on that, I would recommend leaning further that way or further the other way in order to maximize your actual abilities. You need to see how you play basically on autopilot without even thinking. Watch a few VODs back and see what you do when you're not even trying to play a certain style. This is your muscle memory. This is the playstyle that you have instinctively. This is the thing that you should be working on. So basically find out what kind of player you are, whether you're a big flicker, whether you're someone that holds angles, making micro adjustments, and then continue to excel and learn at that exact thing, because it's going to be so much easier than trying to learn a completely different, not instinctual game style. Hey, do you like headshots? Hit subscribe. Could help, can't hurt. Number three, mouse settings. DPI, or dots per inch, is basically how fast your mouse moves between 2 points or 2 dots. Report rate or polling rate is basically just how frequently your mouse is reporting any adjustments. Well, wouldn't this mean that higher polling rate and a higher DPI would mean that your mouse is going to be more accurate? Kind of. In the past, a lot of people actually shied away from high DPI because they found it to be less accurate depending on the kind of monitor that you're using. I personally think that it's a lot of placebo, and honestly it's just because a lot of these pros have started playing games with mouses that only ever had 400 or 800 DPI, and so they're just used to it, and so basically all they're doing is sticking to what they're used to because it has made them professional, and that's exactly what you should be doing. They're literally professionals. Why would they change their settings? All that's going to do is introduce a new element to their game, which could do nothing more than hinder. Maybe it will help them increase a tiny amount, but the downside is it could make them significantly worse. And changing these settings frequently is not consistent. It's not going to help your aim consistently, and it's not going to help them as professionals. Are you a professional? Are you? So for you, this is something that you can actually tinker with. I personally have used 1600, 800, even 3200 with my mouse and have found them all to be kind of a little bit differently. It all depends on the mouse itself, the mouse pad, your own innate reaction speeds. All these sorts of variables make them all completely different to the user. So I personally found that 800 was a nice sweet spot. It kind of felt perfectly responsive. 1600 felt a little bit over responsive. It made making fine adjustments really difficult for me personally, but a lot of other people, it might be the perfect DPI for them. It's all subjective, except for higher polling rate. Now you want that to be the highest number possible. For a lot of mice out there, it's about 500, but for gaming mice and good quality high-end gaming mice, it's generally 1000 or so. As high as possible.
Say what? I'm fine. I'm pretty fine. What?
Also, figure out what your eDPI is, which is effective dots per inch. I'm going to put a calculator in the description below. Go to that, find out what your eDPI is, and that will give you the ability to be consistent across almost every game that you play. Now, here's a quick tip from the range. So what you want to do is go to Valorant, go to the range, drop a bunch of bots and just try to flick headshots from different angles. If you're consistently missing your shots because you're overcompensating or you're under flicking, then adjust your sensitivity right there in the range bit by bit until you start noticing your range of flicking and where your sweet spot is. You might discover that you need to play much higher sensitivity or even lower depending on your wrist or elbow use. But try this for a little while, and once you find a good sensitivity, give it a go in Swift Play and see how it feels. Number 4, you don't have to go slow. Having a really low eDPI, say around 300, isn't the only option available to you. A lot of new and younger players, and actually even quite a lot of pros, will tell you the lower the better. It makes micro adjustments with headshots and things like that a lot easier. It's generally more accurate. However, this comes at the cost of high difficulty when it comes to flicking, as you're going to use your elbow instead of your wrist a lot more. That's generally less accurate. Also, your movement overall is going to be significantly slower, so needing to turn 180 and hit a shot from behind you is almost impossible. A lot of older players, like myself,
Okay, boomer,
actually use a pretty high eDPI, and that's because when games like Counter-Strike 1.5 and 1.6 were the FPS games, it's just what everybody did. Everybody played at a pretty high sensitivity. And what higher eDPI is good at is rapid adjustments. It's great for flicking, it's great for changing where you are almost instantaneously, but it comes at the cost of precision unless you're really willing to practice. I personally think again that the sweet spot is going to be somewhere in the middle. Most people will lean one way or the other without being really on either end of the extremes. I use, let me check, I've totally forgotten what it was, 0.466 Valorant sensitivity at 800 DPI. This gives me an eDPI of 372. But again, I've come from a higher sensitivity background, so I've actually lowered that over time. And what that's given me is the ability to maintain these flicks and quick movement, but also slightly more headshot accuracy. Number 5, now this one is going to be obvious to some, but not to everybody. Stick with it. Don't change your sensitivity every day. Don't change your sensitivity rapidly because you saw somebody else using it and they got an ace. Use the tips that I've listed to find your Goldilocks sensitivity. Generally, you might find not a specific sensitivity, but you might find a very specific range of sensitivity that you fluctuate between. Stick to that. Give it a few weeks. Give your brain time to adjust to the new reaction speeds it's going to need, to all the different variables that you've now put in front of it. Sometimes you have to move backwards to move forwards. So if you're playing games with this new sensitivity and you're losing, that doesn't mean that you're not improving in the long run. Stick with it. If after 2 or 3 weeks of playing like this, you're still losing and you're not improving, then maybe change your sensitivity slightly towards what you used to play and keep adjusting. This is a long-term thing and a learned thing, so it takes time to adjust. It takes time for your muscle memory to adjust to these new settings like I just said. All these things will take time to feel natural, but once they do, you will have found the sensitivity that you will be using for the rest of your life. Because trust me, once you have found the sweet spot for yourself, you won't even be looking at other people. You don't need Hiko's sensitivity. You don't need Ten's sensitivity. You don't need to play like prod if that's not who you are. You're going to find the best way for you to play at your best, and that's the thing that you should be doing. Anyway guys, that's it. It's just a short video this week. I hope you all really enjoy it. Hope you enjoy all the new animations and things like that I've brought in every week, new videos. So if you have something that you would like me to make a Valorant guide to, drop it in the comments. I'd love to hear all of your feedback. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll catch you next time. Peace out from your boy Soy.